Hi, this is Riley at No Fun Club.
No fun.
We thought we'd highlight some of the equipment we have here alongside some cool free software that you can use at home. And I'm going to show how it might be different or the same from the real thing. We're going to be looking at how to use a Pultec style EQ. We have some real Pultec EQs in Studio A and B here at
No fun.
and we'll be demonstrating them alongside a free plugin by Ignite Amps called PTEq. This plugin claims to digitally model every component in the original circuit, so theoretically it should sound very close to the original. We'll start the video with some musical examples and a description of what a Pultec EQ is, and afterwards we can get into some more in-depth comparisons. A Pultec EQ is a classic EQ design, developed in the 1950s by Pulse Techniques. When we think of an EQ today, most people think of something like this, where we can sweep the frequency spectrum and boost or cut anywhere. Well, back in the 1950s, the patent for a sweepable EQ hadn't even been invented yet. Most recording engineers at the time were accustomed to using simple tone shaping EQs, which basically amounted to more bass or less bass, more high-end or less high-end, or just no EQ at all. You can just move the mic around. The Pultec EQ P1A was one of the first EQs on the market that could allow you more fine-tuned control of which frequency to boost or cut. And of a handful of EQs which came out at the time, it's kind of the one that's gained the most fame and notoriety. The Pultec EQ is a passive EQ design. A passive EQ doesn't actually need any power source to EQ an audio signal. However, passive circuits will result in a substantial drop in level. The Pultec gets around this problem with a tube amplification stage, boosting the signal back up to its previous level. There are some other passive EQs which actually have no power at all. We're going to focus on the Pultec because it's a lot more common. While the EQ-P1A doesn't have sweepable frequencies like a modern EQ, it has a few fixed EQ points that you can switch between, so it allows you to boost or cut at those frequencies. Now you might ask at this time, why use an EQ that doesn't have as many options as new ones? And there's a number of reasons for this. My favorite answer is a Pultec gives you enough control to EQ lots of sounds well, but because of its clever design, it's hard to make something sound bad. This is not true with something like a parametric EQ, where you can really mess something up. Because of its simplicity, once you understand what the options are on a Pultec, you can quickly turn a few knobs and there's your sound. Lastly, passive EQs have a reputation of being smooth and natural sounding. The EQ-P1A's passive EQ, along with its amplification section featuring tubes and transformers, can be a warm and gentle coloring option for your sonic palette. And the big knobs are really nice and satisfying to turn. With the digital version, you obviously won't have the nice vintage style knobs, but can it be capable of delivering on some of the other reasons one might turn to a Pultec? Okay, so we're going to start with showing EQing an acoustic guitar. As you can probably hear, this acoustic guitar was mic'd pretty close up. So there's some low-end muddiness and woofiness that I want to get rid of. Also, this guitar in particular is going to be fit into a whole mix. So while we don't want to kill all the low-end, we can get rid of quite a bit because that's going to be taken up by other instruments. So I'll start. This is just set to 100. You can see that's very drastically just getting rid of all the low-end. Now that's too much. But if we boost at the same frequency, you can really quickly bring in a little bit of that low end back in. Very low, only at 1. Now at the high end, we may want to add a little bit of a sparkle. Now it's sparkly, but it's also kind of harsh. Even though we have the boost and attenuation set both at 10 kilohertz. So you can boost and cut at the same frequency. But so there we can get nice high end without it being harsh. It's worth mentioning that the boost on this model is actually a peaking filter. All the others are shelves, but this is a peaking or bell filter. So let's try that in the plugin. Yeah, so it's worth mentioning here with this plugin version, this model's the mid-range EQ of Pultec and also their high and low pass filters, but I just have those turned off right now. So we'll try doing this same thing. So on the hardware, you could just go to 1 and that was enough low end, and I feel like that's not quite the case here. But the sound, it's not too different. Use and functionality. You can choose from different tube types. The difference is like really subtle. I'm just gonna leave it on the default one. I'm not gonna go through there and try those. Okay, so next we're gonna EQ a kick drum with the Pultec. This is something that Pultec's well known for. If you look, you'll notice that we can select all the way down to 20 hertz, which is as low as we're supposed to be able to hear, but truthfully, you don't really hear that much down there. It's more of a feeling. Because this is a shelf filter, if we boost all the way down there at 20 hertz, we're also boosting a lot of stuff above that as well. Now with kick drums, you often get sort of ugly frequency stuff happening around the fundamental or the resonant frequency of the drum. And interestingly, even though these are both shelves, one that boosts, one that cuts, at the same frequency, the interaction between the two bands on a Pultec has a nice feature of hollowing out the area that often gets ugly on kick drums. Now, if you wanted to, you could add some more definition to the top end. Say at 4 or 5. And to get rid of all that cymbal ugliness, I'll put this attenuation shelf up at 20. We can try that with the plugin. Try this again. Cool. Okay, so now we're going to try EQing a full mix with the Pultec. This time we're going to be using 2 of them. This one will be for the left side of the mix and this is the right. So just try and make the same changes on both sides so it doesn't sound wonky, louder in the left ear, right ear. We can try again to do what we did with the kick drum of boosting the really low lows, but also cutting them to clean up something. There's something I think is interesting about the design of the Pultec is it almost gives you have your cake and eat it too type of situation, where you have the same frequency on a boost and cut, so you can get more of more and more of less at the same time. It sort of just feels good to be able to add more and more and still get less. So we'll try doing again something similar. sounds good. Again, it's not too far off. Okay, so as the last example here, I'm going to do this one mic drum recording. So this drum loop was recorded with an SR2N ribbon microphone, and that's it. It can be kind of fun to take one of those one mic recordings and see if you can get it sounding like a decent drum sound with just an EQ and maybe some compression. So I'll start with the low end trick. I'm going to put it at 30 hertz for this. You can see that's very a lot going on in the low end. Let's try 20. Yeah, like 30 more. Okay, then we'll do a boost. Pretty high up. Let's try cutting at that same spot. Yeah, definitely more fun to listen to anyway. That low end and a little top end. Okay, let's try it in the plugin. Okay, so here we are with the plugin. Try and do the same thing. Boosting and cutting at 30. And boosting and cutting at 10 with the broad somewhere around 7 or 8. To me, this doesn't feel quite the same in the high end. But it's in the same ballpark. So for this section, we're going to take a break from using our ears, and we're just going to use Q-Clone, which will show us the shape of the software and the hardware. So I'm boosting at 3K with the bandwidth sharp, setting it on the hardware here. And the gain is all the way up on both. So toggling between them, you can see that we're pretty close. The plugin is sharper. It looks like it might actually be at a different frequency point. So it's worth mentioning that technically it seems like this software is modeling the EQP1A, and the hardware we have here is the EQP1A3, but they should be pretty much the same circuit. It shouldn't change this much. Now I'm just setting the software and the hardware both to broad at the same frequency. Seems a little closer. The software is still boosting a little more. Seems like there's a little bit of tiny dip in volume using the hardware. It's very small, so I'll try and adjust that a little bit and just send a hotter level to the software, but still it's a slightly different shape, and it looks like the frequency might be just slightly off. Now we're testing the high attenuation. So in answer to the question from earlier in the video, can you use this free plugin to do some of the things you would use a Pultec for? I think the answer is yes, but it doesn't sound that similar to the real unit. I spent some time with my eyes and ears trying to match the settings as close as possible between the two for some audio examples we have coming up at the end of the video. And when I null tested them, that is, flip the polarity of one and test it against the other, I couldn't get them to cancel each other out more than 15 or 16 decibels, which isn't nothing, but there are plugins that model hardware that null a lot more than that. I think this comes down partly to the fact that this company modeled the schematic, but probably since it's a free plugin, they wouldn't have had months and months to test it against real units and tweak it to be perfect, which is what companies who specialize or are well renowned for hardware modeling will do. They'll spend months, sometimes years, testing their schematic model against real units. Now, the other big part of this is even if you had a model in software that was perfect and no one could tell the difference, a hardware unit is still a real physical piece of equipment that you have a relationship with. It changes over time. If you want to use it, you have to commit to turning it on, walking across the room, maybe sitting down on the floor, and moving the knobs and dials. It means you spend more time with it. You think about it differently. There's all these things that come into that just can't be simulated with software. And that's not really something that you can say it's better or worse. It's just a choice. So yeah, I'm going to leave you with these audio samples. Please feel free to post in the comments which ones you think are which. And also let us know in the comments which other pieces of gear you'd like us to do videos about. I hope this video was useful or entertaining for you, and thanks for watching it.